Did Solana break out from its downward trend line, or is this just a fake pump with more downside to come? In today's video, we're going to be jumping into the technical analysis on Solana, giving my thoughts and opinions on where I think Solana is heading next. Let's kick things off by taking a look at Solana here, paired up with USDT on the one-day Binance timeframes. So let's go ahead and take a look, right? So here we can see that we have had this downward trend line following on from last video that we did on Solana here. We can see that we had a couple of touch points right in here, and we were looking at whether or not we we're going to get rejection from this particular area on the downward trend. Now, we are still setting ourselves up here with some lower highs, and it is a little bit on the bearish side, but we have the potential for a bit of a run to the upside. And so all attention is going to be on the bulls as to whether or not they're going to be able to do this. So you can see the downward trend line started on the 1st of April. We touched again here on this downward trend line on the 24th of April, and we recently had the breakout on the 4th of May. Okay, so what's going on? Well, we can see here that we did close above the 50 exponential moving average. It's the blue line coming through here, but it didn't last very long. One day, and we kind of moved down. We saw rejection again on the 50 simple moving average, the yellow line coming through the chart. And you can see this dashed white line here. This is what the bulls need to cross. It doesn't even need to be a closed position, but it does need to wick up higher than $162.45. And the reason for that is it prevents us from having more room to the downside towards this targeted range down here at $95.20 to $107.62. That was as part of the video that I put out about 4 days ago. Okay, so it's important that we understand that there is a very clear target that the bulls have to kind of achieve. Basically, go up higher than 162.45. Now, if they can get a closed position above the 50 simple moving average, the yellow line, that's going to be a pretty big bullish signal as well. Okay, it would actually break our structure here from lower highs and actually start to set a higher high here on the one-day time frame. Now, we are, of course, in lower highs as well, so we can find this as a bit of a continuation pattern, ultimately where we're ranging between the high side and the low side in a triangular wedge, which ultimately would break to the downside. Now, following on from the video that I did a few days ago, the concern was a 5-wave movement to the downside. Let me show you what we're talking about. We're talking about a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, now with this most recent break to the upside, it hasn't changed our structure. This structure is only broken when we go up higher than $162.45. Okay, so there's a clear understanding here that the bulls do have to rally up higher in order to achieve that kind of breakout situation. But as with everything, the higher that we've moved here, the lower that we're actually going to end up moving down later. Okay, so it's going to be an interesting one to keep a close eye on. The positivity, though, does come in form of the 200 exponential moving average, the white line coming through the chart. This 200 EMA is lower than the current price action. That means that we should and still are bullish here on Solana until proven otherwise. Essentially, that trend filter that is the 200 EMA. If we close lower than that, then of course we can start thinking about macro bearish movements. But we do have here is actually the price action being higher than a 200 EMA, although is finding resistance on the 50 simple and the 50 exponential moving averages at the moment. So for Solana here, we can see that we have that potential break to the upside. So the question becomes, is it real or is it not? And well, if we have this back test and we actually find that our previous resistance trend line to the downside turns into a support line, we might get that breakout situation that I know the bulls are looking for. Let's go ahead and take a look at momentum. Well, momentum on the daily time frame doesn't necessarily support this idea. The stochastic RSI that you see here is actually indicating that we have much further to the downside to go. Aligns quite nicely with Elliott wave theory, telling us that unless we push up higher than the $162.45, then unfortunately, yeah, we're likely to see further downside, head down towards the $100, maybe even a little bit less than $100 here for Solana. But there is some positivity on the slightly smaller time frames. The 8-hour and the 4-hour are oversold, and they are showing us with some positivity in terms of there might be a little bit more of a move to the upside, which might be exactly what the bulls are looking for. Let's turn this one off and throw on the relative relative strength index, the RSI. Here on the daily time frame, you can see that it is still lower than the 50 level, indicating that the market hasn't really turned bullish yet on Solana. We did have that little bit of a push to the upside, but in the most recent few days, we have, of course, started to pull back down. Momentum hasn't been supported the idea of a move to the upside. This is also a divergence indicator, so it should show us any divergences between the relative strength index, the RSI, and the price action, and there isn't any. So there's no bullish or bearish divergences here. Basically, price action and momentum are quite lined up with what is going on in the market. If we take a look at the MACD, you can actually start to see here that positivity has started to kind of waver. You can see here the histogram is starting to decrease a little bit. You can see these moving averages are likely to cross again in a more bearish way. So the MACD, although is a laggy indicator, is also kind of lining up with the idea that we still have more momentum to the downside than to the upside. So unfortunately, maybe there isn't a reason to be that bullish on the market right now. And so all eyes are going to be on whether or not we can find support and start to rally up from here, or whether or not we do continue to move on down and look for positions around that kind of 200 exponential moving average and down into our targeted fifth wave movement. Now, if I take this up into a weekly time frame, you can see here that this area that we have marked up at $95 to $107 coincides with the 50 exponential weekly moving average. Okay, and that's going to be a potential area for key support for Solana. It means that we've had a nice healthy correction, but we probably will be looking for a bounce at some point soon. It's also indicated on that 8-hour, 4-hour time frames with a momentum that is indicating an oversold status, basically saying that we're likely to see a bit of a relief in the negative price action soon here for Solana. But obviously my main concern is that if we do have this kind of move finishing off down here in that kind of $100 and $107 range, then we bounce up, we actually slip down more towards the 50 exponential moving average at a later date, giving us a big three-wave correction on the weekly time frame. This could drag out all the way through May into June, maybe even late July by the time the market's ready to recover, which actually coincides very nicely with the idea that Q3 is potentially a bullish quarter here for the crypto market. So for Solana on the weekly time frame, I think there's a lot to play for. Take a look at the momentum. You can see that we're already down in the oversold area, but again, we can be down here for a very significant period of time. So we are looking for a weekly momentum shift back to the upside, and we're looking for that bit of a relief rally here for Solana overall. Okay, I just don't think we're necessarily right where we need to be at the moment, considering the daily time frame. Could be completely wrong, of course, because you cannot actually determine price action based on stochastic RSIs, but it does show you that momentum is ready, at least in a key area on the weekly time frame, for a momentum shift back higher. Now, if we go ahead and take a look at the divergence indicator, we are still above the 50 level on the weekly time frame, indicating that the market is still bullish on the weekly. Like I said, it's kind of bullish also on the daily time frame from the 200 EMA point of view. And so the weekly kind of aligns to that idea. Although we've shifted down quite a bit on terms of the relative strength index, it is actually giving us the idea that we're still in a bullish market because we're above that 50 level. Okay, and we can potentially see reversal from here and we start this next leg to the upside. I think it's going to be a few weeks out, potentially a few months out, but it's good to see that progress is being made from these momentum-based indicators. If we take a look at the MACD here on the weekly time frame, it doesn't look as good, but it is only showing you the most recent price action, and it's kind of laggy, right? So it only shows you what's only just happened. It doesn't really give you the predictive capabilities. But here you can see a negative cross on our moving averages. You can see the histogram turned red here on the MACD on the weekly time frame as well. So again, indicating to us that maybe we've got a bit more room to the downside on the weekly time frame before we get that momentum shift back higher. But again, I wouldn't be betting all of my cards on the MACD, for example. It's very, very laggy in comparison to the relative strength index, or more specifically the stochastic relative strength index, which is this one here. So knowing that we are potentially looking at this from this kind of point of view, and we're looking for a bigger correction to the downside, what does that mean? Well, it means that we are potentially going to be seeing some pretty decent prices for Solana, some great accumulative areas before we get into that next kind of big surge to the upside. And I do want to be kind of talking about the idea that we move somewhere between $1,800 and $4,000 for Solana in a big three-wave pattern, which would complete a big bullish cycle over multiple years here for SOL token. Obviously, as we get into 2025, I think March specifically, the token unlocks. VCs are going to be basically looking to maybe liquidate some of their assets. I think that's going to be a huge concern. But until we kind of get into, March of 2025, I think we've got some bullish times here for Solana. You can let me know what your thoughts are on all of this in the comments down below. If you haven't already done so, smash that like button. I appreciate that. If you're new, subscribe. And guys, why don't you check out this video right here where we're talking what is going on with XRP.